Today, I got a chance to speak with my good friend Jim Mann at Thrasio. He is the director of acquisitions for them, especially in the European market. I met Jim a while back. He was part of a mastermind that I co-founded called Million Dollar Sellers, where we had hundreds of 7 and 8 figure sellers. And he had grown his business, eventually sold it, and has become part of their team there. Tremendous conversation, and looking forward to sharing some of the knowledge bombs that he dropped. I don't even know that that's something that you guys want to be called, really, because although the space is being crowded with aggregators, you are doing it much bigger, faster. You were the first. Your goal is to become like a Procter and Gamble of internet brands. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Aggregator undervalues what we're doing. Definitely, that's how we
That's my
started,
feel.
right?
Yeah.
So the idea was let's put a few brands together, and then by doing that, we can get some deep knowledge and skill around PPC and supply chain, and that will allow us to be kind of slightly more nimble and smarter than some of the other operators. And it was aggregation, but now with what, 70 aggregators, like that in the space,
probably 170,
right? So the aggregator space is becoming like Amazon. It's like commoditized. So like how how do we differentiate? So yeah, we've had to move on, and we're investing in different channels, technology. We're just, I don't think, like in any world you can't stand still. So aggregation per se is great to a point, but it's not going to mean that Thrasio or any of the other guys will be the one that comes out winning in 3 or 4, 5 years time if we don't evolve and sort of up our game the whole time. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely see that evolution, and I see the direction you're going. I'm very familiar with a lot of the directors and the departments that you guys have created that separate you from the other guys who are still in that gathering mode, right? Like they're just gathering brands, but you guys are creating companies and you're scaling companies, which is a far different skill set, a far different thing. So I wanted to talk to you today for a few different reasons. First of all, I want to get to know you and your background, how you got involved with Thrasio. I know that you were a very early employee, low 3 digits. Now you guys are into the 4 digits. So tell me, what were you doing before you joined Thrasio?
Yeah, I've had a slightly checkered history. So I did in my 20s and early 30s, I worked in consulting. I did the fluffy side of leadership and people change. And we were very often pulled in post M&A on enterprise M&A, where the guys would put 2 companies together because the numbers looked fantastic. And then you had tribal warfare, and this is why so many mergers fail, right? Because the leadership teams are all about survival and taking each other out rather than delivering the value that the numbers should be.
Yeah, one plus one equals 1 instead of 1 plus 1 equaling 3, right?
Yeah, but they don't. They would take. So we used to come in, and we were sort of like shipped in to go like get these guys to work. Work out who the leadership team should be, what's the leadership story, how they're going to engage the organization, people, process, technology, and make this whole thing come together.
What was your go-to? What was your go-to management style there? Were you doing OKRs? Were you doing, what was your management process system that you were implementing to help align everyone?
Look, the first thing was, this is going to sound really ethereal, but to work out what the purpose of the organization is, right? If you can come up with a purpose statement that engages people, that pulls everyone together. So you go, here's our purpose. If that's our purpose, what are the beliefs and values that we have to have as a team and an organization to deliver on that purpose? And then you can start working out on, the metrics, the hardest stuff, the process, the technology, the OKRs, and that. But you have to start at the top with what's our story? What's our leadership story? And then people can go, I buy into that. I want to be part of this organization, or they go. And it's
they weed themselves out too. But that's a really long day or few days that you guys have to get together in a room and fight it out, right? Like you've got people with different opinions. Generally, if they're already upper management, then they're very opinionated, and they have their own vision of what they think the company is and should be. And I imagine that it gets pretty heated in those boardrooms when you guys are really hashing that out.
It's tough, and you'll have a board of 10 to 12. Suddenly it's 24 people in a room, and they know that there's only going to be 12 seats left. And then you come down to the sort of the leadership, the management teams below that, And they're like, well, you know, if my boss gets taken out, where does that leave me? And so the whole organization is operating under fear and survival rather than delivering on you know, what should be a really nice story of a merger. So yeah, so I did that for about 10 years, 9 years I was doing that for, and I loved it. But I just think as a human being, most people after 10 years just get bored, and I got bored of it. I didn't want to be doing it when I was 45, 50, 60. So I did something a bit radical. I got mortgage free, and I decided to move to Spain and just work it out from there. So I ended up in a place called Tarifa in the south of Spain. I bought some land. I built a retail unit there, and I was planning to rent it out, but I got caught by the crisis in 2007, 8. So I ended up opening up. I became a shopkeeper, and I opened
a
up.
Nice lifestyle business, but it's probably not very profitable.
No, and I had 4 kids at the same time, so kind of, and retail was starting to tank. So you know, I experienced this sort of shift from retail to online, and I heard about FBA. And long story short, I started my FBA business in 2013. Built that up to multi-7-figure business. It was in the travel category. So in 2020, COVID hit, and you know, I got taken out. Sales tanked, you know, first of all in Europe and then US about 4 weeks later. And I know you've got some travel brands, so like you know, you've got the wound. Right?
I was very lucky that represented probably less than 15% of our overall portfolio, and then the growth in our toy brand was like double, so it offset plus. Luckily, so I wasn't all in with my eggs in one basket. But if you were, travel was a bit like abysmal. It was like down 80%.
Yeah. I mean, I was all in. I was 100%. So I got taken out spectacularly when that hit, and so I had a few months of you know, it was panic, right? No one really knew what was going to happen, so I had to let the team go. I had to you know, look at pulling stuff out of warehouse, out of FBA, and setting up, you know, sort of just stripping out every bit of cost I could. And then it's like, what do I do now? And people coming to me and going, look, you know how to do FBA, you know, as well as anyone I know. Can you manage this brand? And I was like, do you know what? I don't like doing it anymore. You know, I enjoyed starting a brand. I was not enjoying operating on Amazon. And so, you know, I knew Stephanie from the MDS Mastermind, and that led to a conversation around joining Thrasio. And I said to the guys, I don't know anything about M&A. I'm not a banker, but I used to work in consulting. I get business. I've had an FBA business since 2013. I know pretty much all there is to know about FBA. And they're like, great, come and join us, you know, lead up acquisitions in the UK and Europe. And here I am today, like a year later, doing M&A. So yeah, I've had a slightly zigzaggy career that I'm not qualified to do much, but
that's the most exciting type of life, right? Like, it's a journey. It's just not one clear path that you know, and if you're, it's so boring the other way, right? Like you said, you get bored after 10 years of doing the same thing and fighting in boardrooms with all these people, that, you know, it's the same story over and over at some point, and you want a different path. So now it's different for you on a daily basis. You're looking at different deals. You're interacting with different personalities. The team is constantly growing, so you even have new people around you, even within your organization.
So yeah, but it's great. We the one thing we all have in common is that we don't know half the team because we're all new. So it's a really fun environment, because everyone, hey, when did you join? Well, I've been here 2 weeks. I've been here 4 weeks. Right? And it actually bonds everyone very quickly, because you need to help each other to make this thing work. So what could be confusing, and it's organized chaos, but it bonds people quickly because you all need each other. You can't come into an organization moving this fast without all just like holding hands and doing it together. So it's a very bonding kind of environment. It's great.
It takes a lot of trust too. It's that's a phenomenal way to put it. That you guys are all holding hands while you're basically running downhill.
Yeah. And it's, you know, there's no, by definition, when, you know, every time you build a system and a process and a structure, it's outdated by the, you know, within weeks. So, you know, it's a very you know, people are kind of independent, entrepreneurial. They're happy living with ambiguity. So it's becoming quite a big company by headcount, but the vibe is still super entrepreneurial, which is great. At the minute it gets too structured, I'll probably be gone, because that's not me. I'm not the right guy for that environment.
It's amazing. So let's peel back the curtain a little bit about you know, you're mostly focused in Europe, and for brands there. How would you compare the companies in Europe versus the ones that are just .com? Do you have more opportunity because it's just like, do you have brands? Obviously you're finding brands that are probably global, but are you valuing brands that are just Europe right now because there's that upside of bringing them and expanding and expansion?
Yeah, I mean, look, the main difference between Europe and US is US is obviously a bigger market, more people, more money being spent. Um, the third party logistics network is much more advanced, so you can run much bigger revenues in the US with a simplified structure. Europe is effectively like a series of states. It's like we're not the United States, but Europe is a lot of different countries, but with different languages, very different laws, and so it's harder to execute and more complex. But the thing that's nice about Europe, if you nail Europe, so many people are scared of it. It's a bit of a barrier to entry. So the guys that are doing well in Europe, yeah, they're doing well. And I've got loads of seller friends who blew up in the States in 2014, 15, 16. And then, right, let's go and conquer Europe. And they're like,
they lost money.
Shit. Yeah, they're like this, and then they kind of bleed for 6 months to a year and pull out and go back to the States. So Europe's not easy, but it is a big opportunity. But you got to go in with your eyes open and commit to it, and just make sure you got your compliance, your legal, your tax, and all that stuff in place. But then it's great.
Yeah, we explored it too. I think I paid VAT taxes for about 8 months before I never even sent anything. I just signed up and started paying VAT taxes, and a quarterly payment would come due and I'd pay it. And I'm like, are we ever going to send anything there? Why am I even paying this? And I was paying this company to do it for me every single quarter. And I was like, man, I'm just lighting money on fire because I'm not going to take that extra step. I'd rather just spend more time developing new products for .com because the ROI was higher for us. Yeah. And it was so much, like the ambiguity around the new processes. It's very hard. It is a huge barrier to entry, which I think can be an advantage for those that navigate it, just like any barrier to entry, right? Like that's what Amazon, when they make things harder, it's actually better for those that are willing to put in the work to figure it out, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you can, I think in Europe, you can easily expect to do it, just in Germany and UK, half of what you're doing in the US. And if you nail it in Europe, it can be another, it can match numbers in the States. So the prize is there. It's worth it.
How do the products translate? So when you're evaluating a brand that's only in Europe, because it tastes are different, products are different, what they're called are different, the market is different, the competition is different. How is that evaluation process for you, where you look at a product that's doing well in Europe and then wondering, will this sell or translate in the US?
Yeah, so there's two sides to that, Brandon. Like one is, so typically, like, a water bottle, right, in the States has got 70,000 reviews, like the number one. And the same in Germany might have, in Europe might have like 30,000. So, taking a US ASIN into Europe potentially is easier than the other way around because it comes in with this review bias.
Now it comes in with reviews, right? That was a big barrier for me before, is like I spent up so much time building up thousands of reviews for my best sellers, and I'm going to bring them to Europe and start all over. And they would let you have those reviews until you got your first review in Europe. And that was such a kick in the nuts. I was like, it's going to convert great for a week and then good luck. Now you're up against the big dogs, but now you can bring your reviews over and they translate, right?
Yeah. And so we're putting a lot of time into pulling the data on that, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around, what if the US ASINs come to Europe, and can US ASINs compete in this, so, we've got a big tech team pulling all of this data now so that we can sort of make decisions based on fact rather than feelings and rumors, which a lot of us operate on rumors, right? And hearsay on Amazon.
Well, not only that, like there's Amazon's known for frequent review sweeps, and one just happened maybe last week or so, right? I have a member in the inner circle who was sharing their product for feedback because they hadn't done as good of a job as they wanted. Super competitive, super competitive product. And now this member happens to be a doctor. And I think I'm going to do a case study on this because like it's so fascinating. But they're a doctor. They developed this product. It's great, and they believe in it, and they've got a little bit of money to put into it, probably enough to do it. And but the problem is, like, don't quite get that next level of Amazon, the content and everything. And so they're going up. They had 14 sellers that they were going up against that each had more than 10,000 reviews in this space. And the top 2 or 3 sellers went from 70 or 80,000 reviews down to 10 and 14,000 reviews. Over 70% of their reviews were wiped out in this last sweep. And I was like, well, that makes it a little bit better, I guess. But it's still 10,000 reviews is quite a bit of.
Still quite a mountain climb.
Yeah.
Did they come back in, or was this part of the cleanup from some Chinese sellers?
I think this is no, the reviews are just gone and these sellers are still active. So it's right. I think what they do is Amazon will identify just bad buyers or bribed buyers or professional reviewers or bots, and then eventually just like they'll pull the trigger. Like they'll keep a database similar to like what they did with all these Chinese sellers recently. They had a database that had leaked apparently to some Chinese people. Maybe they paid someone to pull it. They had 200,000 Amazon accounts in this database that Amazon had labeled cheaters. Now, wow. The reason they weren't doing anything about it is because it was positive ROI for Amazon. But the FTC steps in and says, you need to start doing something about these cheaters, particularly the Chinese cheaters, because that's Biden's way of probably putting some pressure on China, because that can devastate the economy in China and is a great pressure point. It's a lever, very little effort behind back doors that doesn't really, it's not America doing it, it's Amazon doing it, right? Like doing the dirty work. And it's resulted in over 55,000 Amazon businesses being shut down, over 4.5 billion in revenue gone, multiple dozens of companies have gone bankrupt, laid off tens of thousands of employees, most in Shenzhen. So you've got one of the most powerful cities, technology hubs in China that is now going through a financial crisis with people who can't pay their rent, it's going to devastate like the economy there, which will ripple to the rest of the country. So it's a really phenomenal thing. So what I think is that the way Amazon operates is they gather data. They know what everyone's doing. They know if you're breaking the rules, and then they just keep you in a database until they decide to hit a button, and then everyone gets wiped. Yeah. And what they've been doing with this large database of 200,000 is just slowly doing it on schedule, because I think that they realize that 200,000 at once would probably hurt them. And so just to help their bottom line, they're just like, all right, this 10,000, this 5,000, this 5,000, like at a time.
But will it hurt Amazon? Because surely like for every bubble you remove, right, another one floats to the top. Right? There's no shortage.
That's exactly right. There's no shortage of products. And because what they're doing, I think the majority of these people are like in skincare and in electronics accessories and electronics and it's interesting. There is like a list of maybe the top 200 that have been suspended and the category they're in and what their revenue was and like some of the accounts associated with them. But what's interesting is some of these companies, before they would go public or when they were filing to go public, they would say, hey, one of our assets we have 700 Amazon accounts. And Amazon's looking at that report and saying, well, I only know about 5. So where's your other 695 accounts, right? And then they pay one of these payment processors for their data, or they basically nudge them or tell them that they have to give them the data or they're going to break their business. And so then they submit all the information about, hey, all 700 of these accounts happen to pay to the same bank account from this same entity, even though you didn't have them linked, now you do, and they're all gone. And then they wipe out the actual business.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a team now in Shenzhen, and you know this, right? So I mean, doing diligence on the Chinese sellers, it's just a different play. It's a different rule book, It really 10 accounts, yeah, exactly the same products but different ASINs and SKUs. Yeah, that's how we do it.
That's how we do it.
How we do it. It's how we've been taught, and that's how we win.
That is exactly how they were taught. It's very interesting because my wife being from China, like whenever we would visit and our team being there, my wife would go attend trainings in the early days, 3, 4, 5 years ago when we were first starting, when we would go out there, and we still send our people to some trainings, but not for the black hat, but like just for management processes and just to see what the latest is, right? And my wife would attend trainings, and one of the first trainings she went to, there was like was a black hat training, and they were teaching how to attack your competitors by changing the category. And that had happened to us, and we didn't know that it was an attack. When we first started, we had like one of the first wireless chargers available on Amazon, and we were crushing it. Like we were selling like 70 a day. We were just like, okay, this is a cool business. We're all in, like, let's do this. And we were transitioning from wholesale. And then one day, like, we dropped to like 4 sales a day. And we're like, what is going on? We have no idea what's happening. It was simply because we got de-indexed because they changed our category, and that was enough to wipe us out. And it wasn't until like a year later when she's at that training that she figured out that someone had attacked us.
Yeah, well, I'm not, we can't mention names, but, you know, people were paying a lot of money to go certain person's mastermind, right? and it was all about the black hat, and some people took it and executed. But I think a lot of people were there just to know what's happening, so that when you get taken out, you can go, well, it could be this, it could be that, and you knew how to respond, right? You know, it was like, how do you
exactly right. I like to tell my students that I'm the professor against the dark arts. I need to teach you exactly what it could be and how you're being attacked, so that you can
don't do it, but understand it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Because it is, and people like the other tactics people are using where they're contributing to your listing in a different marketplace. Like, how would anyone know that that's how that happened? Like, now your account, your product is classified as hazmat or adult because someone inserted contributed to your listing in a way that they shouldn't have been able to. And so how do you counter that? And so I have to teach those things to my students so that they don't fall victim to it. Or if they do, they can counter it very quickly. And if you counter it very quickly, then the people attacking you realize you're not an opponent that they want to go up against, and that it's not worth their time.
Which is critical, right? If you're in a category that has a lot of bad actors, if you punch back quickly, well, not punch back, but resolve, right? Don't go to war, but just show that you pop up and you pop up. Then they'll go and pick on another one in the playground that kind of doesn't come back so quickly.
That's exactly right. Yeah, if you know how to counter those issues very quickly, and it's almost like ignoring the bully. It's like you ignore it, and then if you don't give them their rise, then they just move on. Yeah. So it's a phenomenal environment, and I think that's the discouraging part, and that's the advantage of having a community and learning from someone that's actually doing it too, right? Like, my wife and I have to do that. We're building up our own 8-figure business. We have our own brand. We have our own team in China. I have my finger on the pulse of what's happening. And then that's the difference between just watching some videos on YouTube and then just giving it a go, right? Like, Amazon is probably beyond and matured beyond that opportunity of, I'll just throw something up on Amazon and see how it does, right? It just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, like, you know, I get questions all the time now around what makes the best sales value or exit value for a business, right? And the short answer to that is a differentiated product that's got potential to be a brand and maybe off Amazon rather than another Me Too Amazon product. And, you know, I always say this, and I'm like a broken record, but I think there's 2 types of product on Amazon. There's the commoditized, price sensitive platform product, which is going to be completely owned, dominated, and run and won by the Chinese operators. And then the other guys have half a chance by building either differentiated product and ideally with some sort of brand story that engages a sort of a consumer base that they can start driving traffic in either to their own website or into Amazon through that engaged and passionate consumer. And so, you know, for most of us not living in China and operating in China, we have to go that way, or else it's you know, the doors are closing, right? The walls are closing in on the old kind of SEO tactics on Amazon don't work anymore.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I try to like let my members know and my students know, keyword research, SEO launches, you can probably get something, you know, fairly high percentage of the time that will start generating cash flow for you. But the way you're going to win in this business is creating a real brand. It's going to be creating off Amazon presence, gathering your own database of passionate fans and users and buyers, and then being able to re-engage with that audience and grow into more SKUs and give yourself a level of protection and outside traffic that will help you with ranking and hopefully, you know, to give you a differentiator. Now, on the product side, you know, some people just don't have the money to take out molds, to try new things. And so you have to test those designs ahead of time using services like PickFu. There's just lots of ways that you can still try to differentiate, but then protect your downside, I would say.
Yeah. If you can't differentiate via product, you have to differentiate by brand and story and engaging the audience, right? And you know, your listing you could have exactly the same product on your listing, but if the listing creative talks to your audience in a way that other people are not doing it, then that effectively is differentiation, but just through story and branding, right? And that's, I guess that's what the street fighters have to do whilst they're building up the money in the bank to go and actually then speak to the factory about, you know, designing molds and stuff, which, as you know, like I mean, molds can be anything from like $5 to hundreds of thousands of dollars if they're different components that are being snapped together. So it's a high risk game getting into really customized products.
Yeah, building those moats around customized products, great upside long term, but very, very you know, risky, I would say,
Yeah.
And requires a lot more capital. So, from your perspective, when you're analyzing the brand story, okay, you buy a lot of brands, and you've closed, you know, 150 plus deals total, I think, as a company, or more. It's probably every day it's more. So, and I think I just saw an article released a couple days ago that you guys just acquired 3 more brands, totaling over 90 or $100 million in revenue. So congratulations on that. You're just, you know, growing like crazy. But
I'll take the credit, but I'm just a small cog in this machine.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Like, it's amazing that everyone's doing great.
Yeah, you're very humble too, and but it is a phenomenal machine of a company that you guys have. My question is, when you buy these brands that have this offline presence, that have these audiences, that have these assets offline, how are you cross-pollinating that, or what is your plan? Because I think that it wasn't in the roadmap originally, which makes sense, right? But what is, and this probably isn't your department. You're in purchasing, but the buying the brands, but you're not in the scaling, right? But what is the plan, and how are you going to execute that, you know of, if you know, the cross pollination of to multiply the presence off Amazon?
Look, I mean, D2C is hard, right? Not many Amazon brands make it off Amazon. That's a fact.
Yeah.
And you know, we've invested a lot of time and effort to like, you know, to mitigate the risk on that. So we've got a big D2C team, and those guys are working really hard to work out which brands we think are going to have legs. So if a brand comes and it's got, you know, proven track record of good conversion, click-through, you know, average order value, lifetime value, then, you know, that puts a bit of a premium on that brand. Because otherwise you think it all looks good. They maybe subscribe and save, which is a good indication. There might be a big audience on Instagram, but again, we all know that even that can be manipulated, right? So you have to tread really carefully with all of these signals around the potential D2C revenue. But until someone's actually delivered and got traction, it's a bit risky. So you know, I think, you know, coming back to what you said at the top of the call, you know, aggregators or aggregation gets you so far. But I think what we're all looking for is to find brands that we can take from being an Amazon category leader to being a genuine global category D2C omni-channel leader. And that's a big step for most Amazon brands to take. And not many have got the capability to do that. You know, you can have the best D2C team on the planet, but the foundation has to come from what you've got to build on. And a lot of the brands on Amazon don't have those foundations to make that step easily.
Yeah, phenomenally put. And so to try to break down what you said, just because you're crushing it on Amazon doesn't mean that you can drive your own traffic at a profit to your own conversion on your own site, right?
No, and traffic's shooting up in price, right? It's like the most expensive real estate at the moment. So you know, it's getting, you know, you couldn't spend enough money in COVID when, you know, everything was falling apart, but it's bounced back with a vengeance now. So the cost of traffic is brutal. So again, you know, the risk and of making on D2C is greater than it has been for the last couple of years.
Yeah. So this is where the strategy of, you know, the addition of these brands together, 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 instead of 3. It increases the average order size. You've got a bunch of brands of similar style that you can put under its own third-party site, and now it makes it feasible, right? So from an analysis of buying the brand, you're saying you can't give too much credence to a brand that hasn't proven the concept because it's very difficult. So you're not adding too much of a multiplier. But if someone's already proven the concept, then that's extremely valuable to you, and you guys are paying a higher premium for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, aggregators get a bad rap for being sort of the cheap kind of, bottom of the barrel, but reality is that multiples go from 3 to 10 plus X, and a business gets what it's worth. And if someone's being offered 3X, it's because it's worth 3X. It's not because the aggregator's tight.
Yeah.
If you get 3, 4, 5 people offering you a similar amount of money, that's the fair market value. It's not aggregators not wanting to pay the right money for the business.
Yeah, and then you get into a position now where everyone's fighting each other, and you might get more than your business is worth, which is, part of the bubble, I think. Like right now, you have way too many aggregators that have raised way too much money and don't have anything to spend it on, and they need to spend it. So they are overpaying for businesses without a solid strategy to get that return on investment. They probably wrote it down in a business plan to raise the money. But whether they can actually execute it is another story. And I think a lot of the aggregators out there are going to struggle to do that.
Well, look, we're coming out of a crazy 9 months. So if you think about it, it's a really simple timeline. Thrasio had the press release of unicorn, $1 billion valuation, fastest ever profitable company, $1 billion valuation in American history. Everyone's like, holy shit, what's this business model? So inevitably, right, then there's a ton of people flying into the market. Money's cheap. It's easy to raise. Now all this capital has to be deployed. So around December, January this year, multiples shot up, and people were just deploying cash on any old product or brand just to get deal traction. We'll worry about how to operate later. Let's get some deal traction. Now, there was a massive COVID bump happening at the time. Okay, deals were being signed without any COVID adjustment. And now the hangover is starting to kick in because certain categories have fallen down 50% like a cliff around May. We're seeing it in a lot of the P&Ls we're looking at. And the guys that were throwing money around, in January, December, January to June this year, they're having a real wake-up call right now around the growth or decline of the brands they've bought. And if you've raised capital,
that COVID bump was real, and now you're getting in addition to the COVID bump dropping because people are going back to stores, different markets are changing. You also have the compression of margin because of increased logistics and shipping and
yeah. I mean, it's like a car crash is what I'm saying to everyone, right? The walls are closing in. You've got PPC, you've got ship containers that were $2,000 are now 20 grand. 16 grand if you're lucky, right? Yeah. And then 5 weeks is 8 weeks, and I hope it comes in. You don't know when it's going to land, or if it's going to land, or if Amazon's going to check it in 3 days or 3 weeks. So you've got PPC, you've got raw materials, you've got shipping, and you've got price compression on the platform, right? So for operators, there's this kind of car crusher effect going on. And then if you've acquired at the top of the hill just before the COVID bubble comes back down, there's going to be a significant number of aggregators under a lot of pressure right now, because at the end of the day, the business model is simple. You have to acquire brands and demonstrate that you can outperform the category that you're operating in profitably. And if you can do that consistently, you can raise cash, right? And so Thrasio has done a great job. They've raised $1.7 billion because they can go to the markets and say, look, we've built a team of people here that can outperform in the category. Can we have some more money to keep scaling? If you haven't got that narrative, you're dead, right? Imagine you've got a brand in decline, generating no organic cash flow for growth, and suddenly the markets are going, we're not giving you any money because you guys ain't operating. They're dead. And there are aggregators starting to come to market now, offloading portfolios. So it's going to be an interesting time ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't understand also how the back end of the finances work for these aggregators when it says that they raised money, and not all of it is equity. A lot of it is debt, and these payments are coming due, and then they don't have the money, and there's going to be implosions for sure. People are going to try to get out and cut their losses. The banks are going to be calling for payments, and there's going to be some issues, and these portfolios are not going to get the same amount of money by even close of what they paid because they overpaid. So I think that we've got a little bit more time. A lot of other companies are still raising. I think another $1 billion was raised even 2 weeks ago in the same week. I think over $1 billion was raised. So there's still money coming in. There's still aggregators who are swearing they can do it. Whether they can or not is another story. What I do know is that Thrasio can do it. You guys have done it. You're proving the concept. And I think it's because you were early. You were a early mover, and the team is phenomenal. The systems you put into place. Huge fan of some of the talent you've pillaged. Casey's a good friend and very, very bright. One of the brightest minds in the space, Casey Goss. And, so you've got the right people around you. And, that's why I enjoy talking to everyone on your team and what you guys have going on. So what's next for obviously we see this as a little bit of a bubble. We see a lot of competitors are going to have some issues. A lot of them are already having issues and trying to come to you to offload portfolios. I said it in another interview where it was insane that I saw that people were going around buying with LOIs promising 7, 8, 9x because they thought that if they gathered enough of those together, they could get 20x, at 50 million EBITDA and up. So, and we know some of those guys because of, our relationship in MDS and stuff. And so whether they can execute that is another thing. I think it's a phenomenal business model. I wish them well. I don't know what that's going to do in the long run, because paying 20x for a portfolio of individual brands, if you don't have a long game that isn't going public, I really don't know how you make money with that. Like, what bank that buys that is going to be left holding? Someone's going to be left holding the bag, I think. But what is Thrasio going to do, or how are you moving forward? Where do you see yourself in 6 months and a year?
I think I can speak for acquisitions. We're being really disciplined right now. We're investing in. You can talk to different parts of the business. So we'll start with acquisitions. Like, our buying criteria now is as tight as it's ever been. Okay. Because it's operationally, it's getting tougher for everyone. So by definition, you have to just make sure that you're putting stuff into the team that they've got a good chance of success with, because otherwise the fairy tale comes to an end. So part of that is also looking at off Amazon opportunity. So, it comes back to what I said earlier, what we really want. And, this mission statement of becoming the consumer product, the CPG company of the future, is really overstated. But if there is some credence to that, the foundation's got to be good brands, right? Not just Amazon products. So we're looking for brands that we can turn into off Amazon brands and then potentially become global category leading brands. The other thing is that as you then get stronger in D2C, you're much closer to the consumer. You're not relying on Amazon or all these other channels. So with data, this is when we can start responding quicker and developing products and brands quicker than anyone else. And you can start being a challenger to the Unilevers and the Procter & Gamble's and all that kind of stuff. So it all starts with building D2C capability, having the data, having the technology and the team that can respond to that, having the product development teams, or having all the channels around, affiliates, all the traffic sources. It's quite it's simple, but it's lots of different levers that when you pull them together allows us to be much more than an aggregator, to be I say an e-com growth engine. Whatever we put in, we grow profitably. That's simply what we have to achieve.
I think that's a perfect approach and well thought out. Obviously, the people that you have around you and yourself and your company at the top, some of the brightest people I've met. I spent a lot of time even years ago when the company was first starting and it was 3 or 4 or 5 employees, right? Like showing up with a sign that said, "We buy Amazon businesses." Everyone's like, "Why? You what?"
Yeah, I remember. I was like, "These guys really?" Like, Jesus,
you were at some of those events.
Yeah. We were all sniggering and like, that shows what we knew, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the multiples were 2.4, 2.6, and website closers became a thing. And then like people started like buying more, like there were more and more people coming in with money, and people that had a successful exit maybe in a different life were coming in with a couple $1 million and saying, "Yeah, I'll just take a shortcut. I'll buy this $1 million brand and then see if I can grow it." And then they would join MDS or another Mastermind or try to figure out, what is this Amazon thing? How does it work? And luckily it wasn't as crazy as it is now, because like they were still able to stay afloat while they figured it out.
Yeah.
Much different space. I really appreciate your time. I think one more thing I want to state that is kind of to your point that I see you guys having a huge advantage of is that the aggregators coming in and raising the money that I see, and I've seen the distribution chart of capital raised, and I see the space that you're moving in, and it's very similar to Amazon. Pakistan just got the ability to create Amazon seller accounts, and so you've got 900,000 sellers that are in Pakistan, at least, that are opening up accounts or that want to become sellers. They're operating as maybe VAs right now while they raise a little bit of capital and they start investing and they save up a little bit of money. Traditionally, like a more poor country. But so what ends up happening from a seller standpoint is that I've always told people, like, you need at least $5,000 to maybe even start a private label brand, and it's going to be something cheap, something that costs you a couple dollars to land, that you can, it doesn't move too fast, and that you can buy a couple thousand units, and you got some money to play on the back end. And I break down the calculator and how to figure out how much money you need for a product based on the competition and everything. And I walk people through that. What's happening though is that those are all being saturated. And the same is true for you. Like in order to be successful on Amazon moving forward, I would think that you probably want $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 minimum to get started in this business. That's going to help separate you from that pack. And then for you guys as an aggregator or as a buyer, you're playing in the 20, 30, 50, $100 million acquisition space where those other brands can't afford to do that, where those other buyers can't afford to do that. And so then it becomes more of a sweet spot for you that you can just stay above where everyone's scrounging for scraps and crazy multiples for a $3 million EBITDA business. And you're saying, that's crazy. I'd rather pay the same multiple for a $30 million EBITDA business, $30 million EBITDA business. So do you see that you guys focusing more on larger deals because of that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting space at 100%. And also what you're seeing, Brandon, is that the sort of boutique private equity firms and advisories who would have like sniffed at deals less than 50 million a few years ago, they're all coming down to the streets with the hoods. and so you've got private equity, strategic acquirers, you've got the boutique advisories are all now really interested in this whole Amazon kind of space. So we're moving up into, like, the suits and the suits are kind of stripping off the suits. And
you feel like you're a little snobbish, like
yeah. And they're putting their hoodies on and trying to get down in the hoods with us. And we're all, it's fun. It's a fast moving space, but
I see that. I see that evolution for sure.
Yeah. No, but we're doing much bigger deals, more complex. I mean, for me personally, it's really exciting because it's there's no playbook to the deal. You sit down, you look at the business, you have a conversation about the business, you work out the individual, and you start structuring a deal that's good for them and good for Thrasio. So it's a fun space to be in. Yeah, it's great.
Well, it was a pleasure speaking to you, Jim. I'm glad that we got a chance to hang out today. Any closing words or anything you want to leave? Some information on how people can get a hold of you if they're interested in selling at least their European-based business or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Jim Mann with 2 N's, or jim.mann at thras.io, or our website. And we got teams in Europe and US. So just if it's not right for me, or I'll put you on someone in your local time.
Sounds good, man. Thank you so much for hanging out.
No, it's great to see you. Thank you.